Well, thanks very much for that great introduction and that plug for the Chevy Volt. And we can use nuclear power, we can use whatever's on the grid, so much appreciated. Well, I thought I'd start off my comments here this morning with our R&D announcement that we made back in the July timeframe. As we went through our restructuring in 2009, we made a commitment to invest in the neighborhood of $850 million in R&D in Canada through 2016, and we're well on our way to doing that. We're actually exceeding our targets here as we go. So what I thought I'd talk to you about this morning is some of the elements of that, because $850 million is a very large amount in terms of R&D, and how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that through largely three elements. We're going to do that, of course, internally at the engineering center, which is here in South Oshawa. It's about 15 kilometers down the road where I came from this morning. And so that's the internal way that we're going to do this. Externally, we're going to work with our academic partners, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And as well the supply base that exists here in Durham and in Southern Ontario and in Canada in general. So with that, let's talk about the engineering that we do in Canada. Our CREC Engineering Center on the left there is, as I said, in Oshawa, we have, in terms of product engineering, in the neighborhood of about 300 people working there. We have, I'll say, graduated over time and changed and continue to transform in the work that we do in Canada. If we go back decades, we used to do work that was specific for vehicles that we sold in the Canadian market. As the automotive business has globalized, we built the capability such that we could do full vehicles. And in fact, the Equinox and Terrain that we have in the market today were largely engineered here in Canada at this facility. However, we continue to progress and adapt to the needs of global engineering, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well in a moment. But before I do that, I want to mention as well the picture on the right, which is our wind tunnel with our partners up at UOIT, and of course the General Motors Automotive Center of Excellence there, which positions us very well and others very well to utilize a unique facility in the world that's here in this region. Of course, the wind tunnel, the climatic wind tunnel, is the jewel in the crown, but there's a lot of other facilities in terms of the multi-axis test abilities up there, the quiet rooms, the shakers, and the dynos. So having that here allows us to do some great development work. So a little more about the center. I mentioned that we've really been working our way up the food chain, I call it, to the point where we can do full vehicles. What we're now transitioning to is actually moving further ahead in the time frame to work on R&D, and we call it ATW, Advanced Technical Work. Because we have a multitude of centers around the world that can in fact do vehicle engineering, we really want to tune ourselves into those things that make sense to do in Canada, and I heard a lot about technology clusters. And of course, as we've walked through and examined our transformation, these are the things that we're now working on. We're focusing in the areas of electrification. So the Volt that was mentioned earlier, a lot of the software in terms of the coding was done in Canada, so that's out there. Battery secondary use. We're working on a project that once you're finished with your Volt, there will be a substantial amount of life left in that, so we can repurpose that into the energy sector to balance out loads. And so that work is being done here in Canada as well. On to software and communications, accessing the great things that we have in Southern Ontario, like RIM and QNX, etc. We've got some fantastic academically educated engineers in this category, and so really what we're transitioning to is focusing around, I heard the word clusters earlier, those clusters and strengths that support us doing this business in Canada and continuing sustainable development. A couple other things here as well, gaseous fuels, chassis engineering, we do that as well, and exteriors and structures. because the third pillar in this is lightweighting, which also has key centers of expertise in the region as well. So those are the things that we're working on for the next generation of products. As I mentioned, in the global engineering context, we are one of many centers. Now, you may look at this chart and think this is, for doing vehicle engineering work for those different marketplaces. That's not really the way we do vehicles anymore. Years ago, we have migrated to a global model, so we engineer global vehicles. The key is having different centers around the world to access the technology that makes sense. So we have the highest value in terms of the engineering work that we're doing in specific places. So if you walk through our engineering center in Oshawa today, you would find some vehicle work going on with the Camaro, which is built across the road. You'd find some vehicle work going on with a multitude of North American vehicles. You'd also find a couple of Opels in the shop, doing global work. So it's really centered around the expertise that is in the region. So that's really what we're doing from a General Motors perspective in terms of the engineering that we're doing here. In terms of linking with our partners, academic is an incredibly important one. We, for many years, have been the automotive OEM leader in terms of R&D in Canada, and as you'll see, we have relationships with many strong university partners around Canada, particularly in the region, obviously UOIT, and I should mention, we use them for more than just a wind tunnel. We have relationships in terms of research and, of course, the great feeder pool for engineering talent to use in our center as well. So we'll continue to work those channels and strengthen them as well. From a production perspective, all of our brands are represented in the vehicles that we build in Canada. I talked about the Equinox Terrain that's up there, the Regal, the hometown favorite, the Camaro as well, of which some of the engineering was also done in our center at Oshawa. On the bottom left, the recently announced very high technology XTX from Cadillac. And a bit of a teaser there on the bottom right of the screen is the Impala that will be built next year in the Oshawa facility. That's the production side of things. But the third pillar as well in terms of how we're going to do the R&D work here is on the supplier community. So as well as our suppliers supplying parts for these vehicles, we also work with them on a partnership basis for the advanced technical work that we do as well. So building those partnerships into the supply community is key, and that's why, going back to the technologies that we're working on in Canada, we have a line behind those pillars that are anchored in the supply base, the technology base, and the academic base that's right here in Canada, and in particular, right here in the Durham region. So with that, I will hand it back to our next panelist, and thank you very much.